Destiny has just so fucking demolished you here.
What damn, don't be mean about it, Jesus.
Because why are we focused on that? I thought it was arbitrary.
Because we've made the moral decision to value that thing. Yes, we don't want people to. Hold on. Okay, let me ask you this.
How did we do that?
Destiny's completely right. Hang on.
I've already agreed to that. You're strawmanning my position. You're completely strawmanning my position.
Right?
Yes, you are.
I'm not guessing. I've seen lots of people who are drag queens who are excessively sexual and who do it for a fetish.
Yeah, but up until 10 minutes ago, it sounds like you had no idea that drag shows could exist in a non-sexual manner.
And I wanted to start off with a very basic topic here. I wanted to ask Destiny a question about morality. As you know, Sargon comes on all the time to debate morality with us. Sitch and I talk about objective morality virtually every other stream. Destiny on his stream always does this thing that confuses me as someone who has a kind of a different way of looking at morality. He asks his guests, is that morally wrong? And my brain just kind of skips a beat. So I want to ask Destiny, what do you mean when you say, is an action morally wrong? What does that mean?
I mean, it's going to depend on the context of the conversation. So sometimes when we have talks about things that are illegal, if we're having a conversation on morality, maybe it can be like immigration, right? Should people be allowed to come, into the United States unfettered by the government or something? And we'll be going back and forth, well, you could change the culture, you could bring crime, will you help the economy, will you do this or that? And inevitably, at some point in the conversation, they're like, well, they can't do that, that's illegal. And it's like, well, hold on, we're not having a question of what is the law. We all know what the law is. The question is one of morality. So or do you want to have a moral conversation, or do you want to talk about what the law should be, or do you want to have a different type of conversation? So in that context, it'll usually be with reference to, well, what are we talking about? Because sometimes when you're having moral conversations, which is usually when you're saying, what should we do as people will sometimes make these odd statements where they go, well, that's illegal or not. And it's okay, but that's not really what we're talking about,
But isn't legal immoral too? Isn't legality just morality codified into law and enforced by law enforcement?
Yeah, and I mean, the legal system is downstream from an ethical system, but I mean, that doesn't mean they're the same thing. They're two different things, right? We wouldn't say. I
don't know that they are.
Okay, hold on. Let me make a stronger statement. They are different things. It is irrefutable that they're different things, if for no other reason because we're using different words to refer to two different things. You can have many different types of moralities in a certain country in one law. Arguably, that's every country. In the United States, many different people believe in many different religions, but they all follow the same law. We have to in order to make a country coherent, right?
Right. But I'm saying the law is obviously dictates behavior, right? It's the rules of behavior, and morality is rules of behavior as well. But we're taking those rules of behavior, which are informal rules when we're talking about morality, and we're making them formal rules when we're talking about law. So they still fall under the umbrella of permissible behavior.
Yeah,
correct?
if you want to say that morality and legality are underneath this category that we call rules, we can say that, but just because two things exist under the same category doesn't mean they're the same thing. If I was a programmer, I can make any number of programs or video games or board games that have a number of rules, permissible actions or behaviors, but that doesn't make those rules either moral rules or legal rules. They're just all different types of rules, but they're still different things.
No, and I understand. The reason why I'm asking you is because it comes up so much on your streams. And when you say, is that moral behavior, you're talking about a rule. And when I think of morality, I think of the rules being structured to create a good society, a prosperous society. And if you don't think of it in that context, you're just asking yourself, what is my personal morality is. And I don't believe in a personal morality. Morality is the rules that we all follow together to foster a healthy society.
How can you say morality is the rules that we all follow together when all of us have different moralities?
Because different moralities compete to become the norm, and whichever morality fosters the most, the best system for people personally is adopted by more people because it's successful.
Yeah, but the law right now in the United States doesn't reflect any single morality. It's an amalgamation of a ton of different moral beliefs, depending on where you are.
Well, no, this is why the moral system that you're talking about is a testing ground for what will become legal. And legal has this barrier that it needs to cross, that all the moral systems basically have to abide by it. Like murder is.
Well, hold on, real quick. That's not
a
true.
prohibition.
All moral systems don't have to abide by the legal system. Again, these are because they are fundamentally different things and they inhabit different areas. There's going to be some crossover, but like, so for instance, in most religions that I've heard of, at least in Catholicism, lying is considered immoral. Lying isn't illegal, though.
Right, but but in the case of like murder. Yeah,
I said there is some overlap. So you can find me some behaviors that are both illegal and immoral, but I can find you plenty of things that are illegal and not immoral, and I can find you plenty of things that are immoral but not illegal. So for instance, a lot of the law that exists in the United States might be procedural, right? Like there might be a certain way to start a business in the United States, and maybe I file the wrong paperwork. So that's kind of, in a way, that's illegal. I do something that is against the law, but it's not like immoral, right? Like if I file paperwork a different way or whatever. I don't know if we'd say that rises to the level of immorality. And there's a lot of personal things like thou shalt obey thy mother and father, don't covet thy neighbor's.
You're doing it again.
Wait. I'm not doing it. What I'm demonstrating. Wait. I'm not doing it. What I'm demonstrating to you is that morality and legality, there might be some overlap, but a lot of the area is completely unrelated. And I can give you moral prescriptions that you can't give to me legally. So to say that the two are the same means that you're going to necessarily miss something for both things. They're fundamentally different things, morality and legality.
The only point that I want to make here is that when you say something is, let's take smoking marijuana, for instance, which is technically illegal, but a lot of people would say it's not immoral. It's one of those things that you talked about and said, some things are illegal and people would say, but they aren't immoral. What you're saying when you're saying this isn't immoral, you're kind of making a declaration that this behavior is not going to bring down the downfall of society. This is a moral prohibition that is actually damaging society more than it's helping society. And that's the connection that I don't see being made. And if you don't make that connection, I don't necessarily know how you can have a talk about morality, because you're basically just consulting your gut and saying, this is how I feel, but not necessarily, you can't bring in an evidentiary argument that society would be better if we got rid of this moral prohibition against smoking marijuana until you start looking at evidence and acknowledge that that's what you're saying.
I mean, for that to be true, that's going to depend where the moral statement comes from. Because different people have different ways of arriving. So for normative ethics, different people have different ways of figuring out if an action is right or wrong. So if you are of the mind that smoking a substance is wrong because, we shouldn't be putting those types of things into our body just by virtue, it's just a wrong thing to do, then appealing to like some data-driven argument isn't going to convince somebody like that, right? They're going to be like, I don't care if it makes people happy or whatever. Like, there's a lot of hedonistic things that might be able to make somebody temporarily happier, but the spiritual damage to yourself doesn't make it worth it. So for that type of person, a data-driven argument probably would never work because they're arguing on virtues, not on the outcomes of everything, right?
Well, I'm not talking about convincing somebody. I'm talking about coming to some scientific conclusion on whether or not a prohibition should be moral or immoral.
Yeah, but when you say coming to a scientific conclusion on whether something should be moral or immoral, you can't come to a scientific conclusion on whether things should be moral or immoral.
You can. It depends upon the measurement.
You absolutely cannot. There's no way to do it. Because what should happen in society is a question of philosophy. Science will never tell us what should happen. Science might tell you that if you eat something, you'll die. But for you to say that dying is bad, that's a moral question. It's fundamentally outside the realm of science.
Isn't science about measurement, though?
Yes, but not measuring morality.
So, but what, like, this is why I brought it up to begin with. And I'm being terrible to our guests. I'll say one more thing and then we'll let Carl jump in.
Just to say, Destiny has just so fucking demolished you here.
Don't be mean about it, Jesus.
Yeah, but
this is
boring.
Wait, real quick. I understand why, because this happens a lot. This is a big like Sam Harris thing. Okay, so
I can't.
Just real quick.
Wow.
So we have something. We've got a substance. Okay, let's call this.
I take it back, Carl.
Fuck Carl.
You don't get to talk next.
Okay, you have a thing called normativity. Okay, the thing called normativity. This is like where we make choices for what should be moral, right? So we might say something like it's good for people to be healthy. Now, once we're
having two different conversations.
No, we're not. I promise. I promise.
I understand all of that.
Okay, then let me just walk to the next part, because I promise we're in the same conversation. From normativity, I'm going to walk over to science now, and now I'm going to measure which foods make us the healthiest and what makes us really unhealthy. Now, I might be tempted to say, well, look, science is answering moral questions because it's showing us which foods are healthy or unhealthy. That's not, science is only telling you what's healthy or unhealthy. The moral question was, should we value things that make us healthy or unhealthy? That's a question of normativity. That's over in the realm of ethics. It's fundamentally detached from the world of science. Science will never tell us what is right or wrong or what is good or bad. It'll only tell us like what you said, it measures things.
And I agree with you. But if you want to pick some metrics for society, then you are measuring things. Like if you're judging a society based on, income equality, if you're measuring things on the suicide rate, if you're measuring things on unemployment or employment, you're literally measuring things. So when we take these metrics, we're saying, a good society is one that has a low unemployment rate. A good society is one that has a low
but the science rate. Part doesn't do anything there for you. The science can help hold on, I'm telling you. The science can help you measure it, but the thing you said in the beginning, we pick those things. The picking is the moral part. You're choosing to value unemployment. You're choosing to value wages. You're choosing to value these things. The choice is the moral part. Science can help you measure things after, but we could choose other things. Maybe the healthiest society is the one with the longest type of hair. Whoever has more long hair in society, that's the most moral one. We can use science to measure who has the longest hair, but the moral choice was in the beginning where we chose to value having long hair, like choosing to value the other things that you mentioned.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. You're saying that we need philosophy to choose what a thriving society is.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that we have all these metrics that we measure all the time.
No. Hold on. The metrics. Okay, people. This is called scientism. I'm sorry. The idea that the metrics.
This is not scientism.
Wait, no. Hold on. Because you're making this. Hold on.
Hold on. Look up somebody. Sitch, can you look up scientism?
Scientism is this idea that we can throw ethics and spirituality and philosophy. We can throw all that shit away because science can give us all the answers.
That is not what I'm saying remotely. You're completely strawmanning my argument.
I might be strawmanning it.
As soon as you say scientism, you're strawmanning my argument. I've already conceded. I already agree with you that the values that a society strives for cannot be determined by science.
Sure. What I'm telling you is you keep appealing to these words like metrics. The metrics are arbitrary. You have to choose which metrics to value.
If the suicide rate is arbitrary,
yes.
Why are we so focused on the suicide rate in the trans debate? Why are we focused on that? I thought it was arbitrary.
Because we've made the moral decision to value that thing. Yes, we don't want people to. Hold on. Okay, let me ask you this.
How did we do that?
Let me ask you this, okay? Where does science tell you to care about a person killing themselves?
Where does science tell me?
Yes.
Well, I could give you a scientific reason why people do care about killing themselves.
No, I'm not asking you. I'm asking you, tell me where in science does it say, we ought to be concerned about the suicide rate? Tell me where you find that answer scientifically.
What is the origin of the injunction, Adam?
Well, would it be in science or where in nature?
Either one. If you say in nature, now you're getting back to philosophy. But I'm asking you.
Now we have an argument.
No, there is no argument. I promise you. Okay, because there is no answer.
There is an argument.
No.
What are you talking about?
You can't give me an ought from an is. You just can't do this. It is impossible.
Yes, thank you, Adam,
I
understand.
I'm lost, Adam. On what is the overall point you're trying to make? I guess
the overall point that I'm trying to make is I'm trying to avoid people getting into a conversation and asking, is that something that we should do morally? Is that morally right? Is that morally justified? And just consulting their gut and going, my gut says, yes, that's a good thing to do. Therefore, this is how I'm going to behave.
That's the only way people can answer these moral questions. Really.
What's wrong with me consulting my gut?
Well, your gut could be wrong, Carl. I know it's difficult for you to believe
because this is a question of values. My gut values the things that it values. There's no right or wrong in the things that it values. It just likes these things.
Yeah, right. It's hard. But then it makes it difficult to articulate good reasons. like.
Oh, it makes it. What you want to say is it makes it difficult to resolve moral disagreements, which is true.
Yes,
it is difficult, but that's because moral disagreements and moral fact exist squarely outside the realm of science. If moral fact existed within the realm of science, we could just argue with each other like, oh, you disagree with me morally about this? Well, look at my measurement here. You're wrong. I can't show somebody a measurement that they ought to care about trans people or gay people or whatever. There's no way I can do that.
Destiny, how do we resolve moral disagreements? So we
resolve them in philosophical discussions. We can't appeal to science.
I disagree. But
wait, hold on. You can't disagree with that. It's literally, it is just by virtue of what I'm saying, it is correct. You cannot resolve
it's not, though.
Okay, hold on. Wait, let's do an example then, because that's the easiest to do.
It's fundamentally incorrect.
Somebody says
you can have your philosophical arguments all day long. The society that adopts
okay, hold on.
Ethics,
let's ignore
perpetuates that society.
Let's just do examples so we can actually be on the ground. Okay, example. Okay, somebody says, I think that trans people and doing any type of like conversion therapy, whatever, I think that is immoral because transness is unnatural, and I think that transness is just like a trick that like the devil plays on people that kind of corrupts their minds, and we need spiritual treatment for them, not medical treatment. How do you resolve that?
It's a naturalistic fallacy for one.
Hold on. What do you mean naturalistic fallacy? For you to call
it it's a moral problem because it's unnatural is a naturalistic fallacy.
Well, hold on. What if I believe in naturalism? It's no longer a fallacy now. That's my guiding moral principle. Why shouldn't I believe that the function of our bodies ought to be the case of how they function?
It's a naturalistic fallacy.
No, hold on. The naturalistic fallacy is only a fallacy insofar as you don't believe in naturalism. If I am naturalistic, if I think that we ought to do what our bodies are designed to do, and that is what is morally righteous for us, you can't just say that that's a fallacy. That'd be like me saying, well, I think God told me to. And you're like, well, that's a God fallacy. No, it's not. I believe in God. What do you mean?
I've talked, Carl, you want to jump in here? I feel like you do.
Well... Honestly, there's not really much to say. Like, I just want to beg Destiny to stop beating you. Just please, Destiny, stop hurting him. Like, no, not even joking around. So, the point, Adam, is that science can't give you a prescriptive decision about what you should do. Right? This is not. Destiny's completely right.
Look, all it can be. Hang on, Carl. I've already agreed to that. You're strawmanning my position. You're completely strawmanning my position.
Right?
Yes, you are. Listen.
Okay, go on. How am I strawmanning?
Well, because I've already agreed that science doesn't choose the measurements that we pick for society. The fact that we, as a society, pick a low suicide rate as something that we would like to strive for isn't picked by science. It's picked by.
I don't value that at all. I think in, say, pedophiles, a high suicide rate's really good.
Well, I agree, but the reason
you don't value a low suicide rate, then do you?
Well, but only in a certain demographic that abuses children. Like a low abuse of children is something that we do strive for, but we don't pick that. Science doesn't pick that.
Like the problem, right, is that there are a bunch of values that have been presupposed by any metric that you decide to use, right? Any metric that you pick up and say, this will be a metric that will prove my point, that comes on top of a bunch of presupposed, prepackaged value judgments. And that's what Destiny's saying. Science can't choose those for you. They have to be chosen through philosophical discussion.
Like I said, we're having. And he's right. Look, you guys seem to be completely incapable of understanding my position.
Okay, can you restate your position where you think the disagreement is?
I completely agree with you.
Right.
That science doesn't pick the things that society strives for. When we say we want a low suicide rate, science doesn't pick that. Okay.
Yeah.
Morality picks that. Okay. You know, this nebulous thing that we call morality picks that. But as soon as it does pick it, we as a society start saying, okay, in order to have a low suicide rate, we have to adopt certain behavioral prescriptions to achieve that. And then we start saying things like, okay, well, if we want a low suicide rate and people who have gender dysphoria are more likely to commit suicide,
I don't think that's true.
We have to adopt a moral prescription that we will give them some sort of treatment to avoid the high suicide rate that will result. Do you understand?
No, that's totally the wrong way of looking at things, right? I don't agree that suicide rate is based on people's behavior. Like, suicide rate seems to be based on the way that they feel about the way their lives have gone. right? And so they
I just use that as an example, but the example is immaterial. I understand that you're zooming in on the suicide rate.
I don't think it is immaterial, right? It's like normatively, it doesn't really matter if you're against suicide, because I don't think it's one of those things where morality is a set of principles that decide on right and wrong conduct, right?
Correct.
And
yes.
So,
okay.
I know that's correct. And so when someone's like, "I'm going to kill myself," is that even a moral question? Because all normative conduct, all ethical conduct, requires two people. And if someone is thinking, "I'm going to kill myself," that doesn't require a second person.
Well, it's arguable what your meta ethics are at that point. Because like a religious person might argue that, like, for instance, like masturbation is immoral because it's an improper use of your body. So that could just be there probably are some immoral things that only involve one
suicide
person,
itself, obviously.
right? Or
suicide is illegal, by the way.
That's so many steps removed from this conversation that we don't care.
But the point is, all of these things are up for debate, right? And this is where science just has absolutely nothing to say about any of these discussions.
This is where I completely disagree, because how can you say how do you have a debate and look for an answer, a truth-based answer on questions, if you don't use empiricism, science?
Stop. We're not talking about truth, we're talking about values.
Well, hold on. So there are here. Let's see if I can iron this out. Okay?
No. Put simply, no. I don't see why no one does.
Well, there are
outsource their moral decision-making capacity to scientists.
Well, hold on. There are truth values that Adam is looking for here. Okay, but the truth values you're looking for,
it's not what we're talking.
These are like normative statements that aren't moral statements. So, for instance, we might make the moral statement that we ought to avoid having as many people as possible commit suicide. Right? That's our moral statement. Now we're going to use science to measure how do we reduce the number of people committing suicide. But there is, insofar as we've made the moral statement, now science is just answering normative questions that aren't moral questions, right? So if we do this thing, less people will commit suicide. That's not a moral statement. That's not even a moral claim. There's nothing moral about that. That's just a description. Like, if we do this, less people will commit suicide. If we do that, more people commit suicide. The moral question has already been answered. Now when we want to go on what Adam is calling like fact finding, or when we want to find these truth values, the truth values we're looking for are no longer moral questions, right? The question of how do we reduce suicide in society is not a moral question. The question was, why should we reduce suicide in society? Once we figure that
that's
out,
the moral question.
Yeah, but once we figure that out, that's a question that can only be answered philosophically. And then once we figure that out, we begin our scientific investigations, but there's no morality involved in it at that point. Now it's completely amoral.
Yes, success.
Adam, that's
I have been fully understood.
I've been saying since the beginning of
this. That's what we've been saying since the very beginning of this. So there is no morality involved in the scientific part. Science is only investigating the values that you've chosen to value morally before you begin any scientific work.
But do you understand
your value judgments?
So what and back to the original question then. What is happening here when a guest comes on and you say, you're talking about whether or not doing LSD is moral. Is that moral? Is that immoral?
Okay, I need an example, because it's going to depend why they're asking the question. We might be having a legal debate. We might be having a debate where I'm just trying to figure out what they believe is moral or immoral. We might be having I would need like an example of this, I guess, yeah.
So you're just asking at the base level, is this a thing that everyone should do or not do? Because for me, a moral prescription is something you're saying, this is something nobody should do.
I mean, generally, yeah. But again, this is going to depend on the conversation we're talking about. I think I need examples for this. I don't know what, because like that question of like, well, is that moral? I could be asking that for like 20 different reasons. It's going to depend on the type of conversation I'm having.
Well, how do you even do this if it's like that imprecise what you're even asking?
Hold on. It is absolutely not imprecise. I'm very precise with my language, but it's going to depend on the context of what we're talking about, right? Like I might ask somebody, how fast are you going? Because I'm interested in, I don't know, how fast you're traveling on a boat or a plane or whatever, maybe you're texting. Or I might say, how fast are you going? Because I'm in a car and I feel like they're about to fucking kill us, right? Just because I'm uttering the same words doesn't mean I have to have the exact same meaning every single time. So if I ask somebody is this a moral statement to you? I might be having an argument with somebody over what they think the law should be. Or maybe we were talking about family values and now they seem to say like, nobody should do this. I'm like, well, hold on, is that like a moral statement or like a legal statement, or what do you mean? I might just be trying to clarify their position. So that's why I'm saying I need an example to work off of, not just one sentence that is really devoid of meaning without like greater context surrounding why the question was asked.
I'll look for it.
I think generally when you ask those questions in these kind of conversations, unless you're having a philosophical conversation or debate, it's generally to separate the moral question from some other issue. That's
usually like
kind of
legally,
being conflated together. Yeah.
Like if somebody says some shit like, I would never, ever, ever let my kid do any drug. Even once he turns 20, I'm never going to do it. Like I might ask afterwards, like, do you think that like drugs are immoral? Like I might ask that question because I'm curious like afterwards. And maybe it's like, no, it's not about drugs being immoral. I just think they could hurt you and I have a duty to protect my kid. It's like, oh, okay, maybe that's what you were. Like I might ask a question like that there just to see like what value they're getting at. But it's totally going to depend on the context that it comes up as.
So
cool.
Related to that, and I guess this is a moral question, when it comes to bringing kids to drag shows, which was, dominating the discourse during Pride Month, it seems like a lot of people have a innate moral disgust at something like that, but then have a difficulty actually arguing the point, bringing to words why they think kids should not be at drag shows, non-sexualized, if that's even possible, non-sexualized drag shows. So I was wondering, I don't think I've ever heard you talk about this, Destiny, where your position is on this.
If it's non-sexualized, I don't think it matters. If people are against it and they're having a hard time articulating it, what they probably want to say is that they're kind of opposed to that whole culture in general, and exposing children to it is a bit irresponsible because they think it'll either turn them gay or get them interested in something that they consider immoral. But it might be hard for them they won't want to enunciate that, but that would be my guess.
Isn't it wrong to just pervert children, though?
Well, but pervert is begging the question. Like again, if you think that LGBT stuff is perverse,
I was about to.
Oh yeah, sorry, go for it. Yeah.
What I was saying. If you'd be quiet for a second.
Okay.
You pervert children by introducing them to explicitly sexual content.
Well, but the whole
children.
Well, what he said was that it was a non-sexual drag show, right?
If that's possible.
Yeah, of course it's possible.
If that's possible, but
no, I mean like
probable.
Some people consider drag inherently sexual, like impossible to separate.
I mean, many of the examples that we see very obviously are sexual.
That is true.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a sexual thing, then it's probably not appropriate for children. If it's not sexual, then it probably is.
It's not even probably. It's definitely not appropriate because what it does is it violates the sanctity of their innocence.
Okay, so no one cares about this. If it's going to be inherently,
they absolutely do.
If it's an inherently sexual thing, then the answer
you should care about this as a father.
No, what I'm saying is that if you're playing games with the definitions of things, then obviously my answer is going to change. So the initial question,
my definition has been completely concrete here.
That's fine, but you didn't ask the question. Sitch did. Sitch's initial question said non-sexual drag shows. Insofar as there's a non-sexual drag show, it would appear to me that it would be basically the same as any costume party thing that you might take kids to, pageants or whatever the fuck. But if it was an inherently sexual thing, well, now it's a fundamentally different question. You probably shouldn't be taking children to sexual things like that. That'd be my guess. But it's
probable though.
That's the problem. Is like if you or other people view that drag can be separated from sexuality, then you say, oh, it's just guys dressed up in costumes. But if Carl and other people say no, all drag is inherently sexual, then obviously that's where they're coming from.
Well, I mean, what drag isn't sexual?
I mean, do you think that all of dancing is inherently sexual?
No,
I didn't ask that question. What drag isn't sexual?
I don't know if men just wearing women's clothing is inherently sexual. Is it?
Yeah, but that's not what drag is. Drag is a whole performance, right?
Yeah, I thought the performance is that some men will wear
Can you give me an example? Like send me a link.
I haven't been to a drag show. I don't go to drag shows. I haven't seen any of that shit since I was in fucking high school.
I haven't either, but you see clips of it all over the internet, right?
No, I don't see. What I'm probably going to see on the internet is going to be the most hyper crazy shit that conservatives can find to get riled up over.
My understanding, find all sorts of things.
Sure, my understanding is that a drag show is just men that wear hyper exaggerated, hyper feminine clothing. So it'll be insane makeup, huge wigs, huge high heels, big billowy dresses, or like really sexy shit or whatever. That's my understanding for what like a drag show is. Now, if they maybe some these days, or maybe it's different, or maybe people disagree that they also involve some sexual element, that might be it too. But I haven't heard that. I thought that drag shows were just men that like kind of like do the thing where they're wearing like the hyper ultra feminist or female clothing.
I don't know, man. They always seem to be sexualized to me.
Well, of course, if you hold on, you must understand that if you're on conservative parts of the internet seeing clips of drag shows, you're like the selection bias there is, of course, you're only going to be seeing the most hypersexualized ones, right?
Feel free to send me the non-sexualized
Wait, do you recognize that, or are you actually totally blind to that?
Feel free to send me the non-sexualized ones.
Wait, do you recognize that? Are you totally blind to that?
You're the one who said he couldn't find any.
Okay, if I hang out on all of leftist internet and I'm looking at like clips of people like in churches or whatever, and then I come to you saying this is what everybody acts like in a church.
I'm not interested in answering your hypothetical. Show me the non-sexualized drag.
Okay, do you want me to look for...
Yeah. If you think it exists, show me it, and I'll say, okay, if that's not sexualized and it's obviously not sexual,
Okay,
then
sure.
fine,
So
because
Twitch,
that's not violating.
Sure.
Just send him a
child's innocence
screenshot of
or
Mrs.
sexual-
Doubtfire.
So TwitchCon Amsterdam, you guys can be
that
right or wrong.
drag?
I only turned in for a little bit. So TwitchCon Amsterdam just had people doing drag for the intro thing, and I don't think they did anything sexual for that. Would that qualify?
I don't
for
know.
it?
You'll have to send me it. I haven't seen it.
Well, but
I'm not saying
hypothetically,
it can't happen.
right? But
I'm saying I've never seen an
hypothetically,
example.
Carl, if you had a drag show where it's just guys wearing, not dresses that are not, sexualized, they're covering everything or whatever, they're still just they're walking down the runway and people are applauding or cheering or whatever, you would say that that's fine as long as it's not.
The question is of intent, right? What's the purpose of this? And I don't know what the purpose of it is.
Okay, so here I'm sending. This is an America's Got Talent show. Tell me if you consider any part of this sexual. I'm scrolling through it and it doesn't seem to be.
Guys, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show today. And this is PSA Sitch and this is my work wife and my anniversary. So let's keep it civil today.
First of all,
Yeah,
you're
this-
my
this-
work wife.
I,
Okay.
I
we're
don't know
celebrating.
if this is what I would call drag. Like, I'm not sure if this is drag, but this is definitely non-sexual. Or at least I'm
passed.
scrubbing through it. The guy's dressed as like a clown and stuff. So like, this doesn't look inappropriate. But then I don't know if I call this drag. This just seems like dress up.
In female stuff, he's got hyper pink,
No,
like
it's not
6-inch heels, the pink wig. None of this is.
Well, at 226, that's like Renaissance French costumes. And another point, he's wearing a clown outfit. I mean,
Yeah,
give me a
this is.
timestamp.
I mean, this is like
I don't know
obviously.
if I call these female, but
there's obviously
but
a
even
queer
then,
aesthetic being hit here, but I don't know if I'd call this
let's
straight up
just, let's
drag.
say that these
Okay.
were.
I'll
these
look
were all
for
feminine
more
clothes, right?
drag examples.
No, no.
Okay.
Well, I
that's
just-
fine.
I don't-
I'm happy
I don't
to
think
say that-
having-
let's just assume that it would look like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. This is non-sexual, and let's assume that French clothes are in fact women's clothes. That's fine. Okay, we have an example of non-sexualized drag. That's fine.
Okay, so you.
But
so
then
you
does that
don't
like change
actually-
your whole opinion on it, or?
It doesn't change my opinion on sexualized performances being shown to children, but this doesn't appear to be a sexualized performance, and it doesn't appear to be
Right.
shown to children, even if it was, because it's not a sexualized performance. I don't see a problem with it.
So you would agree with Destiny? You have the same position. You're fine with drag shows as long as they're not sexualized.
I don't know if I would call this drag though.
Well, I'm just saying
But I mean,
if there's a hypothetical one that
if this is drag,
Okay,
and I
yes.
don't know that.
What about this
Then
RuPaul
sure.
shit? Most watched drag race performance 2021, where it looks like they're doing like song and dance and shit like this. I think we would probably consider this drag, or
it's RuPaul, so yeah, I mean definitionally.
now
Sure,
we might
seem
consider it drag because some of the
very sexual.
dancing is like they might do hip thrusts or whatever. I don't know. People dance crazy these days.
It's just,
Well, there's
the
a
general quality of our culture these days.
there's a topless guy in a tutu gyrating, getting dollar bills thrown on stage. So I don't know.
Okay, so this seems to be lurching into that sort of dodgy territory. doesn't
Sure,
it?
but it's not doing so in a way that's unique to drag. It's just where the culture is for dancing, right? Like people freak out with
Sure,
Miley Cyrus
well-
and all that shit in the past because it was like getting sexualized or shit like
Yeah,
that,
but
right?
to be fair, do you really want like a 5-year-old watching Miley Cyrus?
Sure, but
What was the
all
what was the one that wouldn't let the one who did Wet Ass Pussy, who was doing like an Instagram video and had the song on, and her kid came in and she made the kid leave the room when her song was on. Right?
Sure, maybe, yeah.
Minaj.
I'm just saying that, like, what
so
we're
we
talking
know
about, what
that
we're
the author of the thing themselves thinks that's not appropriate for children.
Sure. What I'm saying though is that like it seems like the issue then isn't intrinsically tied to drag. It's just sexual performances in front of children, right? Which I
Yes,
think we
right.
probably all agree is probably not an okay thing.
There's
Insofar
no
as
probably about it.
if a drag show exists that isn't sexualized, if we can even conceive of one, then then it's probably okay if there's nothing sexual. I love everyone in chat is saying to bring up pantomime drag as a UK thing. I don't know what the fuck that means, but
Again, well, yeah. I mean, if that's drag, the thing is, I only ever see the word drag being applied in the context of like parades and things like this. So it's always in an innately sexualized context. Like pantomime isn't sexualized, obviously, but then it's never called drag. It's called pantomime. So
okay.
but
I don't
it's
know. I
essentially
have no idea because I don't know any British
a man
shit, but-
dresses up as a fat woman for comic effect.
Sure.
Right? But it's obviously not sexualized because it's for kids.
Okay.
I'm kind of surprised, Carl, because I thought you would have taken a hard stance against kids at drag shows, regardless of the sexual
Well,
content.
I don't know whether we actually are defining drag as something that's intrinsically or not necessarily sexualized. Like, it might well be.
Well, like, what is happening
expert
at a
on
drag show? I guess is the question.
Yeah, what's
like,
the point?
what is the actual, like, why are people staying there applauding? What is actually?
Yeah, I thought the more
going on?
fundamental question for usually the conservative. I don't know where Carl is politically right now, but like
I'm happy
usually
to own the conservative position.
Sure. The conservative position would usually be that drag is like men wearing women's clothing is kind of an abomination of like what a man ought to be or what a man should be.
Right.
So why would we expose our children to get them confused about their sexuality or the appropriate gender roles by taking them to places where men are confused about their gender roles or their sexuality? That's what it seems like.
That seems a little bit hard line. I mean, that, in fact, bringing
What is
the
hard line? But
example
that's conservative, right?
Will that affect the suicide rate? I don't know.
That's like saying everyone who leans left is a communist, Destiny.
Well, no, but I'm saying like conservatives will have hard line like moral stances on things related to LGBT issues. Not that they're hard on everything.
That's a very extreme position for a conservative, for anyone really. But like, I mean, this is why pantomime is funny, right? This is making light of men who dress as women. So, you know, this is not inappropriate for children, and it is just a figure of fun.
Okay.
Banger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like even from a non-conservative position, that if you're taking young kids to drag shows, even if they're not sexualized, it seems to me that it's going to be very confusing to children, and would or potentially could cause further gender identity confusion in children. Which, I mean, if that should be like the opposite of what we should be striving for as society. We don't want more kids with, you know, either false positives on gender dysphoria going forward.
I mean, I
think it takes more than a drag show.
Yeah, I don't think that just seeing people dressed in different ways should like confuse you. Mm-hmm. Like if I go over too many like Revolutionary War documentaries and I see people dressed up in wigs and shit, I'm gonna turn trans or something.
That's a little different though, because if you have like say you have a 5-year-old kid at a drag show and you have a bunch of guys wearing women's clothing and all these people are cheering and applauding them, like what does the 5-year-old perceive is happening here? Like why are their parents cheering just this guy wearing a dress or whatever?
Because it's part of the performance.
That's fair.
But why is that a good thing?
What
to
is
see?
happening at drag shows exactly?
I usually it's like part of like the performance of whatever they're doing at drag shows. It might be like ridiculously crazy outfits. I don't think that the child is having the mental process of like, oh my god, my parents are clapping because this person is subverting gender roles by wearing the most hyper.
No, exactly. They're obviously not having that.
Yeah, so they're probably just like I might be poisoned against this because my fucking sister did dance growing up and I had to go to all these horrible goddamn fucking 3-hour performances and shit. But you sit there, you watch the people dance, people clap, and you're like, oh cool, I guess it looked cool. Like that's probably the extent to what the child process is like, oh, I guess this looks cool. Maybe once they're like 14 or 15, maybe they're gonna have like a better idea of kind of like what's going on like mentally. But
I think that's a real question there. Like what I just don't see the appeal of drag. I don't understand what people are getting out of it.
It's a celebration of the LGBT community.
So
yeah, I mean, I think that basically
is it a celebration of sexualities.
Hold on.
What do we do?
I don't think it has anything to do with celebrating necessarily like LGBT community stuff. I think there are some men that like to cross dress, and then I think it actually started in the UK, the drag stuff.
Why do they like to cross dress?
Possibly.
Men like to cross dress for a variety of reasons. The one that I've heard the most commonly is that women's clothing is a lot of fun. That like it's just there's just like way more that women can wear that men can wear, different types of fabrics or whatever. And then some people like it's the same thing as like video games. People will take like one thing and then they will hyper exaggerate it and then make like a thing out of it, right? Like people that speedrun games from 2001. Like how fast can I beat The Legend of Zelda? Well, drag shows are like how ultra feminine can I like cross dress and then like make a show out of it basically.
Yeah, but there seems to be something that underpins that, right?
Like what?
Like that's not just like a casual.
Yeah, is it fun like Disneyland or is it fun like pornographic films?
Yeah,
I don't think it's. I don't think it's. I know that a lot of it gets like. I know the perception is that a lot of it is sexual, but my understanding is that like drag is not supposed to be like an inherently like ultra sexual thing. Like it's guys cross-dressing, but they're not all there. Like I'm sure that a lot of these parties probably turn sexual. They might have like those crowds, the same way that like dances or clubs could be. But in and of itself, I don't think drag is supposed to be like an inherently sexual thing.
I mean, what's the point of cross-dressing if you're not transgender?
I don't know. What's the point of speedrunning video games?
Yeah, but I don't think it's the same thing.
It is the same thing. People find a thing that they enjoy doing. They like the clothes. They like the aspect of picking out like.
That's just reductive. I think there's some motive that underpins it.
Okay, you should talk to somebody that does drag. Do you think there's like this insidious underbelly, like, oh, I think they're doing drag for these reasons?
I didn't say it was insidious.
Sure,
I
but like
just
you're
think there's
making this
something that underpins it.
Yeah, there might not be though. It might just be that they enjoy doing it for the reasons that we could like clearly see why they enjoy doing it. Maybe there might be some
Sure,
people
but
that are
it-
like using it
but-
as like a testing ground for being trans or something. But I mean, I think
Very
it's-
few speed runs turn into orgies, right? Whereas you're saying that
That's
there's a lot of
actually
sexual content.
I would be
in
careful with that
cross-dressing.
one because
So-
gaming communities are super degenerate when it comes to sexual shit. If anything is
Okay,
shown that,
sure. But the
Tell
point
us some
is,
stories,
There seems to
Destiny.
be something underneath it.
I mean, I disagree, but there's no way for us to resolve this without getting somebody into drag here. There could be something underneath it, or it could just be somebody that enjoys doing drag. I don't think there has to be anything underneath it.
Well, but it seems like the person doing the drag and the audience that consumes, the watching of the drag would have completely different motivations. I mean, the individual person could be doing it for, I don't know, they have a weird fetish, or they just makes them feel empowering. But it seems like that the audience watching it, I'm assuming it has something to do with wanting to see gender roles subverted to some context or to some extent.
I feel like it's really weird to have a huge conversation about like why people do drag and why people watch drag when none of us in here either do or watch drag.
Sure, I don't know.
I can't answer these questions. I think it's boring as fuck. I also think fucking F1 and NASCAR is boring as fuck. I have no idea why the fuck people watch that. And I feel the same way about basketball and football, not soccer or whatever. What I mean. So like, I mean, I wouldn't be able to answer those questions either. But like,
you don't know why people watch NASCAR. I mean, I feel like you know why people play video games. Like it
because I play
there's
video
a level
games.
of there's a level of testing your skill and competency at doing a difficult task. Same with NASCAR.
well, hold on, but people that watch NASCAR don't
NASCAR
drive NASCAR. That's different.
Well, a lot of people watch NASCAR for the wrecks, though. They want to see, like, inherently people are doing something extremely dangerous.
They might be.
They're
I can go on
living the
YouTube later
edge.
and watch wrecks, though. I don't have to...
Like a guy dressing up in a dress is not living on the edge doing something dangerous. I mean, there's just
Okay, why
it's
do
difficult
people
to-
watch people dance? Why do people go to dance recitals?
Because it shows
their kids are in them, really.
a level of competency in doing difficult things. The whole idea behind ballet is that it is difficult.
Yeah, and that's the same thing with drag. People watch drag
Okay.
for the same reason that people probably watch people cosplay. There's a level
Is drag difficult? I don't
Absolutely.
think it necessarily.
It
can be. I mean-
absolutely is. You
Okay,
like
so there's competitive drag.
There's
no,
something-
hold on.
there's
Well, no,
something-
it's like saying like is cosplay difficult?
I mean,
like,
there is competitive drag. Okay, so never
No,
mind.
but there's
I got
something
it.
underlying all these things, like with cosplaying. Okay, I mean, people go to them because they like anime, or they like video games. They like the characters that the people are dressing up as. With dance, maybe they're like, oh, I like seeing women and men moving around the stage in what they consider feminine or masculine ways. So there's some underlying idea behind all this stuff. I mean, same with someone who likes to watch people play football, even if they don't play football themselves. I think we can generally understand what's going on there. I guess I'm not sure what's going on with people watching drag shows.
you should interview.
And also, I find it rather
Okay.
uncomfortable to kind of reduce everything to this "I don't know, therefore nothing" position. I don't think that's correct.
No, stop. Hold on. I'm not trying to reduce everything to an I don't know, therefore nothing. But what I'm saying is if we're
say that,
no,
you do actually reduce it.
no,
to that
what I'm
position.
not. What I'm saying is that if we're having
Really?
if we're having a very specific conversation on why do these people do this thing, that seems like one of the few times where it'd probably be a good idea to just bring one of these people on. I'm not saying you
Sure.
can't have an opinion about anything if you have an experience. You can't. I'm just saying it's weird for all of us to be like to try to like massively speculate.
Well,
like, why do they do this? Like, I don't know. Let's find somebody that does it and then bring them on. You probably have someone in your audience, at least one
This
person.
is the philosophical inquiry you were suggesting earlier.
No, hold on. This is absolutely not the philosophical
course
inquiry
it
I
is.
was suggesting earlier. And secondly,
it is.
if this was a true philosophical inquiry, I'd probably want to bring in people with those
Why
experiences.
do they
because
value it? That's
would-
the question.
Yeah, but a question of
That's
value could be related to the individual experiences that somebody has. And if I know anything about
course
philosophy,
it
I'll know
is.
those experiences are fundamentally inaccessible without talking to those people, right?
Not
Yes, necessarily.
No, not necessarily, Destiny.
Experiences-
That would require a complete lack of empathy for other human beings.
No, but empathy in and of itself is not me reaching into somebody's mind to get their feeling.
No, it's
Empathy.
not. It's an inference,
Carl.
and it's okay. to use
It is an
inferences.
inference based on my own experiences. And if I don't
Yes.
have those experiences, then I have to talk to somebody else with those experiences.
Sure, but like you're acting like you've only just opened up an encyclopedia and learned the word.
No,
Right?
what I'm
You've
acting
been a
like
man of
is
the world.
I don't watch drag. I have no fucking idea why people would watch drag. It seems like
Okay.
all of us in here feel the exact same way. So it seems
No.
silly for
How
all
about
of us
this?
to
How about
guess
this,
why people
right?
watch drag instead of just bringing somebody that does.
I'm not guessing. I've seen lots of people who are drag queens who are excessively sexual and who do it for a fetish.
Yeah, but
Right.
up until like
And
10
so-
minutes ago, it sounds like you had no idea that drag shows could exist in a non-sexual manner. So it seems like there's a whole part
I
of...
don't know if they can now.
Okay.
I don't think you've proven that they can. And frankly, I think that honestly, the majority of times where it seems to be referenced, the people who are engaging in it are doing it as some kind of fetish.
The people, when you say the
care.
times referenced, you mean the times it's referenced on conservative media where they're specifically attacking.
Well, no,
so
the
of
RuPaul
course,
thing you just sent me with the person dancing topless with dollar bills in their belt.
sure, but if
That
this is
time.
but if this is par
That's
for
not
the
a non-sexual instant.
it depends. Do you consider all pop dances and all of like dancing today that's done
I
performatively to be
consider all
sexual?
stripper dance as a form of sexuality, yes.
So you didn't answer my question.
Even ballet?
So like any female pop star that goes up and dances and sings on stage is probably going to be doing things that in your mind you might consider sexual. If you consider it all sexual in the same way, that's fine. No?
Hang on, let's stop there, right? I think that we can actually make a distinction here because there are, of course, dances that are not sexual, although you might even be able to extend the argument to say that actually underpinning dance is some sort of sexual element, at least between men and women. But if we're talking about like modern pop, yeah, it's all sexualized. I mean, look at it.
Okay, so then then in that case, I don't know what your standards are for like sexualization, and then I don't. We have to like figure out where the bar is.
Well, I
for
mean,
that.
gyrating hips, people wearing
So like
Nicholas
so somebody like
VV
Michael
possibles.
Jackson or Elvis Presley, you would consider their performances to be sexual performances.
Well, I notice you have to go back quite a few years to give your example of non-sexualized, and I did say.
Wait, hold on. No. I'm going back quite a few years to prove that even then, those in your
Elvis
mind,
was
those would be
very
considered. Yeah, those would be considered
sexualized.
sexual, which is fine.
Yeah,
I'm
but
not
I think
attacking you for your
you could.
definition. I'm just trying to figure out what your definition
I
is.
think you could, but I think it's becoming like I think there's a level of tolerance to these things that has gone way beyond the pale. I mean, the wet ass pussy thing really is pretty fucking gross.
Sure, people said the same about Elvis and Michael Jackson. There's nothing wrong with that either. I'm not attacking your opinion. I'm just curious where the line is.
I'm not saying you're not.
Okay, I don't think people realize how sexual a lot of Michael Jackson's dances were. I think people haven't watched a lot of it.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Okay.
But what you're asking for is a hard line on something that is necessarily vague.
No.
So
Hold on. Okay, let me just explain my thought process. I'm sorry, Jesus. I'm not asking you for a hard line to attack you on the hard line or whatever. I'm just trying to figure out like what is your line on what you consider sexual? Because it might be that you answer in such a way that I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if you consider that sexual, then I would actually say for your world, I think all drag shows are probably somewhat sexual, and for sure. And then we'd agree, and then we just move on. Rather than you and I arguing over what we consider sexual, when your bar for sexuality is way different than my bar, because then it's like, oh, well, now we're arguing like apples and oranges, right?
Sure.
Okay, that's all I'm trying to figure out. Because if you consider like average normal pop stuff sexual, then I might be like, yeah. Or some people would say that, I've heard this said before, I don't know how many people believe it, but I've heard some people in dance say all dance is sexual. All of it is based on human sexuality. And you see it the most in like certain forms of dance or whatever. But I don't know how much people
I
believe
think I think like an intimate
applies.
dance between men and women, you could argue that, but then you get like collective dances between groups of people, which obviously aren't. So
Sure, maybe.
Maypole dance. I guess maypole is
that's
really
not
about
sexual.
hooking up. So